Hey everybody, what is going on? I am Maximus Rex and this is Big Baby Reviews. Today is Joe Quesada Day, so we're looking at the next issue that he did at DC Comics in the early 90s. This is the Ray issue number 3, cover dated April 1992. Just in and around the time where Image Comics is really going to start to blow up, and those guys at Image are going to find massive success in the comics market. Joe Quesada very much will become a popular, somewhat superstar artist a little later on, just a bit after that first Image wave, right? He kind of just missed it by a little bit. So while they're setting up for Image and gearing up for that, he's down in the trenches here at DC Comics, you know, proving himself on the lesser known character of the DC Pantheon, and he's working on the Ray. Obviously a new version of the character, right, which we talked about last 2 reviews. Let's take a quick look at the cover. First of all, this is Joe Quesada's first cover on this miniseries. His signature's here, although De Burke is also there once again, so I assume he's the inker, which that's what that feels like when I look at this image, for a few reasons. He did the last issue's cover, and I believe the first issue, but I'm not 100% sure on that. The signature is a little bit different, so it could be someone else, but at least last issue. And looking at this one here, as far as the main figure of the Ray goes, this is kind of our first real big kind of hero shot of him. With the helmet and everything, the whole getup, we get a first look at the full costume. Looks pretty cool and, you know, pretty faithful, I think, overall to Joe Quesada's kind of look. It's with the background elements that it kind of falls apart a little bit in that the aesthetic is a little quite different, more of a kind of Neil Adams, Bill Sienkiewicz, almost Klaus Janson kind of thing. And it has that same effect where, you know, even though Joe Quesada drew these extra little shots of the Ray here, it definitely feels like De Burke put his stamp on it when he was inking it, and is not inking it in any kind of, you know, Joe Quesada fashion or Joe Quesada aesthetic. It just looks more like your standard kind of DC house style. The background as well, a statted picture of some architecture or city that has been photocopied, and possibly while the photocopy was there, the papers moved around, and that gives you this kind of stretchy effect. Kind of, I mean, I don't know if this works for me particularly. I don't know if it works well for this cover. The main figure, though, I will say is solid and well inked by this guy over Joe Quesada, as opposed to the background stuff, which is a bit weird. Anyways, let's crack her open, have a look inside. So we've kind of picked up on the gimmick now, where when we get a monochrome kind of coloring scheme, we're probably in the past, and this is, you know, one of the first times, or the first time, excuse me, that Ray Terrell, in this case, that's his name, the new Ray, activated some of his powers when he was a kid. So we get flashbacks to that. We've had them in the past issues. Nice way to start off the issue, right? A kid on fire on a chair. It's pretty well drawn as well. Some great art from Quesada all the way throughout this issue. Jaxie Harris scripts, Joe Quesada pencils, Art Nichols inks, lettered by Steve Hain, colored by John Caballero, cover by Randy De Burke, and edited by OWZ. That's very odd, because, I mean, I do see Joe Quesada's signature there. And that definitely, to me, looks like a Joe Quesada Ray figure. Very strange. Someone messed up there. Probably the editor, right? This Owls guy. So to me, the issue starts off a little bit slow, but art-wise, we're still getting the good stuff from Quesada. You know, there's a lot of exposition going on, some flashback sequences explaining things, but he still finds a way with, you know, a high number of panels, keeping it interesting as far as the layouts go and the compositions. You know, something like this already is leaning a little bit towards what Image is going to be popularizing to a more extreme degree. Of, you know, the panel overlaps, the McFarlaneisms, right? The negative space panel, good use of silhouette on this first panel here. This is something that'll come around a lot. Joe Quesada drawing his cat in his comic books. Again, Joe Quesada, he might deny it, but I feel like he took a lot of inspiration for certain aspects of his art and things that he does from Todd McFarlane. So McFarlane would always have, what's the name of that cat? Felix the Cat appear in issues of comics that he worked on. I think his name was Fluffy. I'm not 100% sure, but Joe Quesada would also do that with his cat, who appears here. Kind of goes in line with the self-insert he did the last couple of issues of One of Ray's Friends, which I've told you I'm pretty sure is just a Joe Quesada self-portrait. But yeah, I mean, he's still throwing in tons of panels and some fairly interesting layouts. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I feel like, yeah, he's really pushing the compositions, you know, to take the regular 6-panel grid, 9-panel grid, and change it up and make it more interesting, which I think he's being very successful at in these first few pages. Like I said, they're just a lot of exposition, a lot of flashbacks. Again, we get the monochrome shots here, and he does kind of pick a specific layout on this page for the flashback sequence, which works really well. Still more great use of silhouette throughout. And, you know, I really feel like there's not a huge, like I've talked about how Joe Quesada kind of comes in fully formed. Just genius to throw that shadow on top here from the trees. You know, it's something I'd struggle with doing, and he just throws a bunch of black on there, and it really works. But yeah, I feel like Joe Quesada was fully formed, even from this here. And, you know, when I look at the Daredevil stuff, maybe it's inked a bit better by Jimmy Palmiotti. And, I mean, there's got to be some improvements in his art as well all throughout his career. But, like, I already feel like he's on the level of drawing Daredevil, and he'll be doing some Batman stuff pretty soon. So, yeah, you know, people took notice of him pretty early on the Ray, and then gave him some better jobs, basically. Eventually, he kind of becomes, in a weird way, DC's, you know, house artist, for want of a better term, or in around Nightfall when he's designing Azrael and the Azrael Batman costume and all that. He becomes very, like, almost like the art director, I guess is how I'd put it. The John Romita senior in the 70s, what he was doing at Marvel art directing, Joe Quesada kind of became that, right? And was doing like character designs for other people and stuff. And fairly quickly too. And let's not forget, he did become eventually Marvel's editor-in-chief. So clearly had the talent and the know-how to get to those positions. I feel like he's really getting a handle now on the visual look and the visual language he's using for the Ray. It's becoming a little more kind of consistent. Not that it was bad before, but he's really kind of honed in on it on this issue. And this issue, you know, with the sequences we get here, obviously allow him to do that much more so than issue 1 and 2, where you maybe got like one sequence of the Ray kind of haphazardly using his powers and being confused, right? That's basically what's been going on up to this point. He doesn't have a handle on how to use them, really. And this apparition of his father, once again, is trying to get the point across that, you know, he needs to understand how his powers work and get a handle on them. Great establishing shot here with, you know, again, I've talked about Joe Quesada's mastery of architecture, which is on display here. The worm's eye view, the extreme kind of point of view that he'll use a lot of times. And, you know, the old McFarlane trick, of cropping a vehicle, you know, and only having to draw part of it, but, you know, still very evocative and establishes what's going on in that space. And establishes the van again in this shot here, so it's consistent, right? So Quesada, one of those fairly hot modern 90s artists, not cheaping out on the backgrounds. That's one thing I will say about him. He always put in the effort when it came to that, even in panels where you wouldn't necessarily would have to have backgrounds, like something like this maybe. You know, here it's interesting, he uses the old McFarlane texture, which, you know, all those guys, Liefeld used it as well. They all got it from Arthur Adams, so I guess Joe Quesada's looked at some Arthur Adams as well. But yeah, he doesn't have to throw in these trees and leaves and stuff and here and over there, but he does, and that just gives you that extra layer that makes the image that much more vivid and real, in quotes. So another example, we're back with the Ray, and just it's almost like I almost always kind of saw it as like a playing card is kind of the design idea behind it. Like he's flying around in a rectangle or in a square, and I always just saw like a playing card for some reason. Maybe that's what he's thinking about when he's drawing it. It's a very Mike Mignola kind of panel there. And it's great because as we move forward in the issue, like I said, it's a little more kind of conventional at the beginning, but it starts to kind of ramp up in the storytelling and in the panel layouts, right? We start getting the long vertical 90s panels, the insert panel here within the bigger panel, which I think is great. And his cropping is great, right? Nothing's cut off. Nothing's cutting off the top of the Ray's head here, the Father Ray. So it's all been worked out and planned out. The fingers, you know, everything's very clear and super well cropped. So this is basically where he figures out that he can rearrange atoms and matter, I guess is what he says, right? You're not creating matter, you're only rearranging matter. So he can rearrange matter to actually have some pants on that he doesn't have to burn off. The Ray father suggests that he have a helmet with a fin, right, to help with the whiplash, apparently, from all the flying. And so he kind of gives it a sprucing up, a 90s sprucing up. And another good example of Joe Quesada's great character designs. I think the helmet, I'm not sure about the rest of the costume. It's kind of dated a little bit and very 90s. Does look a lot like a Backstreet Boy here, right? But as for the helmet, I always thought the helmet looked really cool. And there's just something about it that I liked. It reminds us of those old Spartan helmets, right? It's pretty similar, so maybe that's part of it too. But I always thought that the new Rey helmet looked pretty darn cool and not dated, maybe more timeless than the rest of the costume, other than the little dents here for like the rollerblading helmet. So yeah, more examples here of that playing card kind of motif and now he's starting to use it around just individual members and stuff. And like I said, I really feel like he's working out some stuff here. Like how angular is that? And it's amazing. Like just the extreme foreshortening he's doing on that shot, I think looks awesome. The fact that he's making making the clouds almost look like ice cream more than clouds is funny. Visually, I think it works, right? And yeah, they seem very kind of denser, much denser than actual clouds. But like I said, I feel like it works. And always those great worm's eye view shots of stuff, right? Obviously makes things look more impressive. And this kind of implied, once again, using that stark kind of silhouette style that's been popularized by Frank Miller. I wouldn't call it the Frank Miller style, but that's everyone's reference generally, just that stark black and white. Others have done it before, right? But implying the lightning, I think works really well. And then the van pulling up and everything kind of reverts. You know, what was black is now light, right? To a certain degree. And then you get something you didn't see in the image here in the background with the building and everything. Just great. This is the kind of stuff that probably gets in like Batman gigs, right? You can see he's tailor-made to do that stuff. This kind of reminds me of some Daredevil stuff. So this girl, Jennifer, is basically meeting this old guy that I've theorized is probably actually the Rey. I could be wrong on that, but we'll find out later. I don't think we'll find out in this issue. Love the way he does this panel here and the use of the negative. You know, there's no contour line around it. It's just in the negative. I think works really well with just usually you're more used to seeing this kind of use for it, but then throwing in this denser kind of inking to define the borders to a certain extent, I think works really well, right? Black to white. And just these extreme, like, I really feel like it's ramping up as we go through the issue. I've said it before, but the action stuff, he's a master at that. The compositions, you know, the tilted angles, the tilted horizons he's using all throughout. I always love when they do this, right? The one panel that's split into 3 sections or 2 or whatever, just a panel split into different sections. That really works for me, puts emphasis on the specific beats of action going on. Always love that. And boom, like we get to this page. I don't know if it's probably more near the end. It's not quite the middle of the book, but man, just this, you know, not a double page splash, but a double page spread. So the storytelling going all the way across both pages. We get some nice long horizontals down here as well. We got a super long one. Lots of cool shots of the characters, right? Going at it. Use of power. Just every panel is just masterfully composed, right? Like it's with everything that's going on in this scene, right? There's lava, there's smoke, like he's using it all to his advantage, and it's all clear and easily read. That's what's amazing about this. Like he's one of those guys, you know, as opposed to not all the image guys, but some of the image guys who lacked some of the storytelling skills, right? Joe Quesada never lacked in that department at all, and drawing evocative environments and stories. This again, the tilted horizon, right? You probably tilt the horizon in every shot in this page, or almost. Again, not cheaping on the backgrounds. Again, very evocative art. Using some splatter over here in the inking, that's fun. I like this kind of, you know, showing of Rey's powers and how he chose to depict that visually, using the kind of, you know, 1-point perspective, the classic kind of superhero thing, but just throwing in all these different textures and stuff. Looks great. And somehow he gets knocked out, which is kind of weird because, you know, we've been led to believe he's an apparition. These 2 shots here, like, man, that's a poster. I think that looks great. Really works. Maybe just would have contoured the fin a bit more because you're not sure in the shot if that's debris or power or fin. But that's a small gripe. You can fix that real quick. And then, yeah, a very Quesada kind of shot, right? Remember I've talked about the silhouette with the eyes and the mouth. Very Quesada kind of thing that he does a lot. Just all these textures. going through the lava, right? What a great simple kind of depiction of just blazing through what's supposed to be rock, or, well, was lava, I guess. Excuse me. The lava's following him, right? He's bursting, creating a tunnel. The lava's coming in on him, still here, and then burst out into the ocean. It's nice. All of a sudden you got to draw sharks and fish and stuff. And Quesada excels at that as well. Love the way he depicts like the power and the movement of everything underwater. I think this is just great. Very evocative once again. You're not wondering what's going on there. And just lots of great shots of the Ray using his powers, or, you know, just emanating power, I guess, is what's going on through this whole issue. He's figuring out, you know, how it works and stuff. And, you know, the images are just more and more spectacular. This great one. Still, you know, it's almost a splash, but you still get a bit of storytelling here. Some clever storytelling too, right? 2 panels are just basically the build up to this, right? You've got a fully black panel, almost fully black, and just these dots here where, you know, before seeing that, you're like, is that a hand? Maybe it's something else. You're not quite sure. And then it becomes a hand, and then it's clear and you can see it. And then we get this shot here. Just great storytelling here. So here's Jennifer once again talking to creepy candle dude. Ray once again arguing, fighting with supposedly his father. Been going on pretty much for 3 issues now. Another great shot here. Face looks kind of weird, right? All of a sudden Ray is like 40 years old in the shot, but I'll excuse it because I just think that's a great shot of him. So Ray reunites with Jennifer. She tells him she knows a lot about him, but she can't tell him because I can't. No one can be any part of it. You have to do it alone. Oh, that's convenient. So alone? Do what alone, Jenny? Don't go. Don't. Is there like a sexual puberty metaphor there going on? I'm not quite sure. If you understand what I mean, you're probably getting a laugh. If you don't, well, I guess you have to figure it out. Think about it. And I really like this last sequence. It's obviously one last great shot of the Ray. You know, almost a splash once again. He's using that same composition he used on that prior page where he's busting out of the underground, the lava. The fact that she's running away, all of a sudden, you know, it's just her and a white background. But he's still, again, he's using the leaves even to, you know, because I guess it's fall, right? With the way the trees are looking here and having those leaves fall. And then boom, he gives us once again that stark black and white shot, no color, Frank Miller, Sin City type shot. Basically what's being represented is the Ray, you know, using that initial burst to turn his powers on and fly away. And I think it's done masterfully here by Joe Quesada. So there you go, guys. That's my review of the Ray issue number 3. If you are still watching and you are subscribed, thank you so much. I really do appreciate it. If you're watching but you're not subscribed, please do so below. It only takes a quick second for you, and it really helps the channel out, helps us grow, and helps get us out there to other people who are into comic books just like we are. So everyone out there watching, once again, thank you so much, and have yourselves an awesome day.
Like! Subscribe! Like! Subscribe!
King Comics presents Big Baby, Volume 1, Issues 1 to 13. 204 pages of story and art. King Comics also presents Star Crasher one-shot, 32 pages, cosmic sci-fi surrealist adventure. You can find these fine comics at KINGCOMICS.CA, at MaximusRex13 on Instagram, or on Facebook, MaxRex or Big Baby.